The China you have seen in postcards is only a fraction of what actually exists. A tidal wave taller than a building surges across a silver river, while a spring hidden deep in the desert has refused to dry for over 1,000 years. Elsewhere, a razor-thin path of glass stretches across a canyon deep enough to swallow the sky. This is not the China shown in travel brochures. It is a land of hidden geography, extreme engineering and landscapes almost no outsider has ever witnessed. Join us as we uncover the most unseen corners of China, where the extraordinary hides in plain sight. Shantung River. Disobeying the ordinary rules of breaking waves, this river transforms into a giant silver dragon, creating the most spectacular and violent tidal bore in the world. To survive this destructive power, the ancient civilization had to use iron tenons to connect large rocks, forging a massive defensive wall no less solid than the Great Wall. Wall. Whenever this water monster approaches, it emits an earth-shaking roar, deafening like the hooves of tens of thousands of galloping war horses. The cruelty of the current stems from a topographic trap, where millions of tons of water from a 62-mile wide bay are ruthlessly squeezed into a narrow 2-mile gorge. When that entire massive body of water crashes straight into the barriers, an extreme reaction force hurls them into the sky into giant water columns like exploding bombs, splashing 100 feet high. Instead of fleeing in fear, the most reckless surfers on the planet flock here to ride the back of this deadly wave, gliding deep inland for more than an hour. Lorjan Mountain. Honoured as the #1 immortal mountain in the mortal realm, Laojun Mountain takes the form of tens of thousands of giant granite swords piercing straight into the highest clouds. When night falls, the peak transforms into a spectacular observatory, where the brilliant halos from the structures merge with the Milky Way draped across the sky. This heavenly illusion becomes even more intense at an altitude of 7,274 feet, as canyons plunging over 3,281 feet deep constantly absorb moisture to raise a dense ocean of clouds that swallows the earthly world. Hidden behind that surreal beauty is a brutal geological process, as the mountain mass had to endure 1.9 billion years of relentless weathering and erosion to form this magnificent wonder. The pinnacle of madness lies in the solid gold-plated bronze palaces, firmly pinning their foundations onto three jagged, narrow peaks right on the edge of a bottomless abyss to reject all limits of gravity. Tree of Earth, Tibet, China. Amidst the deadly plateau at an altitude of 14,764 feet, where no plant species can survive, nature has carved a giant optical masterpiece named Tree of Earth directly onto the ground. The scenery here undergoes a spectacular transformation in winter, when white snow fills the erosion trenches, turning the pitch-black land into a glowing and jagged tree trunk. Miraculously, the structure of this snow tree perfectly copies the bronchial system in human lungs, sending a chilling message that our planet is actually breathing. However, this macroscopic masterpiece remained invisible for centuries, causing countless nomads walking through to think they were just stepping on muddy and messy crevices. Only when viewed from above does its true face reveal a perfect fractal geometry ratio, carving roots 15 to 30 feet deep into the permafrost layer. Finally, this greatness never stays still, because the freezing water will always tear and reshape the entire painting after every flash flood. Panjin Red Beach, China. Despite bearing the name of a beach, this place is absolutely devoid of any grain of sand, existing only as a vibrant basin of fire floating amidst the blue ocean. Alongside the wingspans of rare cranes, the ground is also a kingdom for billions of tiny crabs, busily digging holes to pump oxygen into the red grass carpet. Visitors can glide across a wooden bridge system 6,562 feet long to witness the ecosystem firsthand without harming the sensitive mudflat layers. The structure of the Suaita salsa plant acts like a giant kidney, both filtering toxic substances and absorbing salt to dye the entire space red. Spreading across more than 64,247 acres, this wetland is nourished by fertile silt from the fourth largest river flowing into the estuary. Although incredibly magnificent, this velvet-like red hue only reaches its peak brilliance for a brief 3 weeks before fading away in late autumn. Chongqing Hongyadong. The whole complex rises about 245 feet high with 11 levels of traditional stilt houses stacked along the mountainside like a vertical street above the river. By day, it feels dark with old wood and grey stone, but from about 6 in the evening to 10 at night, the whole front turns into a glowing golden palace hanging in the city. That dramatic change helps explain the crowds, and during the 2024 National Day holiday, the site received more than 1 million visits. Yet behind that bright face is a history of more than 2,300 years, because this spot was once an important ancient gate and military stronghold. The part that confuses visitors most is that both the first floor and the 11th floor open onto busy roads at different heights, as if the whole city were folded upward. Today, the rebuilt complex covers about 495,000 square feet and works like a pedestrian street in the air, where food, shopping and viewpoints are layered into one cliffside block. Crescent Moon Spring, China. Like an absurd miracle rising from a death zone, Crescent Moon Spring is a crystal clear tear of Mother Earth that has resiliently resisted sand invasion for 2 millennia. At the Emerald Water's Edge, an ancient complex of pavilions still stands tall against storms thanks to an elastic wooden joinery structure completely devoid of modern iron nails. This wonder was nearly strangled to death when over-extraction caused the lake to dry up to a depth of only 3 feet, forcing humans to use artificial water injection to revive it. Long ago, this place was the very boundary of survival on the Silk Road, providing life-saving water that helped merchant caravans squeeze through the narrow gates of death. The surrounding sand dune system, rising 820 feet high, acts as an aerodynamic shield, creating reverse updrafts to hurl sand and dust away from the Crescent Lake surface. When night falls, the absolute darkness transformed the lake into a giant mirror reflecting the entire brilliant Milky Way, creating an illusion of paradise in the heart of the desert. Mount Huashan, plank walk. Becoming the most terrifying walking nightmare on the planet, the plank walk firmly clings to a massive monolithic magma rock at an altitude exceeding 6,890 feet. The infrastructure of this route is chillingly minimalist, consisting only of wooden boards barely 12 inches wide, placed on L-shaped iron bars punched straight into the mountain. A fatal threat comes from the 90-degree cliff, where updraft winds can gust from 34 to 45 miles per hour, waiting to shake any careless climber. Pressing their backs tightly against the cold grey granite wall without protective guardrails, explorers can quickly feel dizzy when facing the endless void and the fog-covered abyss. The cruelest psychological torture is that the destination is actually just a tiny dead end, forcing everyone who survives the path to turn back and pass through the same death gate one more time. Huku Waterfall, China. Lacking the peaceful beauty of other crystal clear waterfalls, this giant muddy monster is honoured as the greatest yellow waterfall on the planet. planet. When the harsh winter arrives, all that cruel and furious power is suddenly sealed into giant marble ice curtains that are chillingly silent. But during the high water season, its deafening roar shatters the eardrums, carrying a physical pressure so terrifying that it has completely destroyed the recording equipment of film crews. That fierce power originates from the calm 984-foot wide riverbed being ruthlessly choked into a steep rocky canyon, narrowed down to about 65 to 98 feet. This sudden topographical fracture forces the muddy lava mass to plunge into a 98-foot deep abyss, creating a natural meat grinder with a flow rate of 282,000 cubic feet per second. That treacherous and deadly current unintentionally became the launch pad for the immortal legend, where brave carps conquering the falls will immediately transform into sacred dragons. Shangjiaji Grand Canyon Glass Bridge spanning a massive faulted canyon. This super glass bridge displays thrilling greatness as it hovers right above a steep abyss, 984 feet deep. The structure pushes the steel beams to both edges, creating a completely glass center core that strips away all feeling of support and forces explorers to step directly on the air. Contrary to its fragile look, this glass surface once proved its incredible endurance through a violent test with dozens of consecutive sledgehammer blows and a 2-ton car crushing over it without shattering. Even so, nature still turns this place into a psychological torture chamber by heating the surface to 122 degrees Fahrenheit in summer, or using fog to hide the bottom and create the illusion that walkers are stepping straight into nothingness. Pushing the madness to its peak, a massive jumping platform in the middle of the bridge beckons thrill seekers to throw themselves into a freefall 853 feet deep. Emerald Lake, China. Not a random creation. Emerald Lake appears as a grand installation art piece amidst the barren desert of Qinghai. Viewed from above, porcelain white crystal salt strips separate hundreds of small ponds, forming a magnificent jade mosaic carpet. Due to the thick mineral concentration, the lake surface is heavy and still like tempered glass, almost never rippling even when the wind blows. Old mining pits have silently absorbed potassium and lithium over decades to transform industrial scars into an irrational green hue. At an altitude of 10,328 feet, sunlight pierces the thin atmosphere intensely, making the watercolors glow like freshly polished gemstones. However, the white salt layer reflects 80% of ultraviolet rays, creating a light trap that burns tourists' skin twice as fast as normal. Fanjingshan, China. Rising above the cloud layer at 8,438 feet, this ancient mountain has endured for 1,400,000,000 years as a lone witness to time. The journey to touch the sky requires iron will, as you must conquer nearly 9,000 steep steps clinging tightly to the cliffside. Directly above a deep, yawning chasm, a narrow stone bridge connects two peaks at an altitude of 8,200 feet, creating a breathtakingly precarious wonder. This is the exclusive kingdom of the rare Guizhou golden monkeys, spirits from the Ice Age still remaining amidst the great forest. The landscape becomes even more surreal with a 33-foot tall mushroom-shaped rock balancing absurdly on a tiny base through millions of years of storms. Rising above all earthly worries, this sacred space is where humans find absolute inner peace amidst the floating ocean of clouds. Flaming Mountains, erguendo-se de forma árida no meio do deserto, esta gigantesca cadeia de arenito rejeita completamente a beleza pacífica e se revela como um incinerador geológico brutalmente mortal. Sob o sol do meio-dia, o ar quente, que sobe intensamente, distorce a luz, fazendo a paisagem tremer com violência, como a boca de uma fornalha de fundição prestes a explodir. Quando o pôr do sol chega toda a encosta, reflete a luz brilhante e arde visualmente como um enorme carvão em brasa recém-tirado das cinzas. A severidade atinge o auge quando a chuva de menos de 3 centímetros por ano é instantaneamente fervida e evaporada por completo antes mesmo de conseguir nutrir o solo. Todas as tentativas de construir templos desmoronam diante do calor que destrói materiais combinado com o fluxo de ar seco pronto para drenar a respiração de qualquer pessoa que se aproxime. Chaka Salt Lake, China. Not a distant mirage, the mirror of the sky is a pure white salt desert covering 41 square miles, where the ground and clouds seem to merge into one. When night falls, the silent lake bed transforms into a colossal lens reflecting the Milky Way, making you feel as if you are wandering through the center of billions of stars. Rusty railway tracks, once used for transporting salt, still run straight into the heart of the lake, creating a classic scene of solitude and surrealism. Located at an altitude of 10,036 feet, the low air pressure here helps the shallow water only reaching ankle depth achieve absolute stillness. However, the saturated salt concentration on the lake floor will rapidly suck moisture from the skin, causing tourists' bare feet to crack and ache if exposed for too long. This brilliant beauty also carries a double threat, as the pure salt reflects 90% of ultraviolet rays, directly burning the skin twice as fast as normal. Tenga Desert, China. Not every desert is only sand and wind, and the Tenga Desert stands out because it holds hundreds of freshwater lakes within its dry landscape. For centuries, it served as an important passage for ancient merchants, linking distant regions through risky journeys across harsh terrain. The crescent-shaped dunes constantly shift with the direction of the wind, showing that this desert is always moving rather than fixed. Covering about 16,600 square miles, it is one of the largest desert regions in China and experiences extremely dry climate conditions. Many lakes here differ in mineral content and salinity, which causes their watercolour to change with season and light. Light. To reduce sand expansion toward transport lines, people created large straw checkerboard systems across thousands of acres, becoming a model for desert control engineering. Mount Hua, China. Honoured as the most dangerous mountain under heaven, Mount Hua is a massive granite block challenging all limits of human survival. The most terrifying sensation is conquering the steep stone stairs where you must press your face against the cliff and grip iron chains to move inch by inch. Amidst this brutal terrain, resilient porters still carry supplies on their backs, crossing thousands of steps to maintain life on the high peaks. Reigning at an altitude of 7,070 feet, this wonder possesses 90-degree vertical stone walls created by intense geological faults. On unbelievably narrow rock ledges, ancient tower shrines still sit perched, challenging the solitude amidst the floating sea of clouds. Conquering this 9-hour journey is not only a physical challenge, but also a lesson in absolute focus before the void of the abyss. Juzaigu, China. Rising from an ancient limestone plateau in China, Juzaigu feels like a natural laboratory where water and minerals shape unusual colors. Many lakes are so clear that visitors can see dozens of feet down to the bottom, where layers of sediment and sunken trees remain sharply visible. Fallen trunks do not decay over time because calcium-rich minerals seal their surfaces, slowly turning them into pale, wooden formations beneath the water. Water. The waterfalls do not drop in a single fall but spread across natural limestone steps, forming thin curtains that flow in gentle layers. Lake colours shift from bright emerald to deep blue within a short distance as light, depth and dissolved minerals interact. Although the scenery attracts global attention, the high mineral content limits aquatic life, making the water unsafe to drink and leaving very few fish in the main lakes. Furong, ancient town, China. Completely shattering the limits of a peaceful ancient town, this 2,000-year-old wonder hangs precariously right above a giant waterfall that roars day and night. Due to the cutthroat steep terrain with countless narrow steps, motorised vehicles are completely banned, forcing all items to be transported manually by the shoulders of porters. More especially, this land once bore a different title before officially changing its name forever, thanks to the shocking appeal of a classic movie. Right in the center, the magnificent waterfall, 131 feet wide with a 196-foot drop, splits the town in half, pouring a massive volume of water into the endless abyss. Clinging tightly to both sides of the vertical cliffs are precarious stilt houses erected using a complex wooden mortise system without using any iron nails. When 10,000 red lanterns light up, creating a magical kingdom at night, the roaring sound of the waterfall turns into a soothing melody, lulling the villagers to sleep. Hutuan Village, China, exposing the cruel power of creation. This magical ghost village is an overwhelming testament to the failure of civilization against the expansion of nature. Although wearing an emerald coat all year round, whenever autumn arrives, the entire vegetation bursts into blood red colours, creating a hauntingly melancholic sea of fire. Nestled under that shape-shifting camouflage are hundreds of brick building blocks, now transformed into bizarre green geometric shapes bobbing along the hillside. It is hard to believe that this desolate place was once an incredibly bustling fishing kingdom in the 1980s with over 3,000 residents. In just 20 short years of abandonment, the massive ivy root network has continuously secreted organic acids, silently eroding and crushing the toughest cement walls. This spine-chillingly silent space is the truest answer to the vision of how beautifully stunning the Earth would be if mankind disappeared forever. Wangshan Valley, China. Bringing limitless imagination into real life, this spectacular wonder is the magical fantasy world suspended in the sky, stepping right out from the pages of novels. Looking up from the deep abyss, you will be overwhelmed by tens of thousands of grey-tiled houses perched on the steep cliff, exactly like giant swallow nests rejecting all laws of gravity. The quietness of these suspended rooms is constantly torn apart by the deafening roar of the white foaming waterfall rushing right under the edge of the balcony. It is hard to believe that this magnificent wonderland was once a discarded toxic rock quarry, consuming nearly $400 million and a full decade of cleanup to be revived. Having no foundation on flat ground, the entire architectural block is firmly pinned to the mountain by massive steel cores piercing the cliff, but perfectly disguised under rustic wooden structures. Instead of strolling on flat roads, travellers must heart-stoppingly weave through a network of fragile wooden plank walkways clinging tightly to the precarious mountainside amidst a sea of fog. Longji rice terraces. From above, the whole mountainside looks like the body of a giant dragon, while the soft curved fields wrap around the peak like layers of shining scales. When the rice ripens, golden colour spreads across the slopes and makes the whole area glow like a huge cloth under the sun. Then in summer, that golden colour gives way to fresh green, flowing outward in soft waves that seem to run far into the distance. Behind that beauty stands the work of many generations, beginning in the 13th century and slowly taking shape until the Qing era. With little more than hoes, shovels, and their own hands, people carved out more than 25 square miles of terraces and kept working the mountains for 700 years. That is why this place is not only beautiful like a silk carpet changing colour, but also a living mark of patience and human strength high in the mountains. Dushanzi, Grand Canyon. Take just one more step across that flat, barren land, and the earth suddenly tears open into a giant cut, as if the ground has been split in two beneath your feet. At sunrise or sunset, shadows slide across the twisted rock folds and make the whole canyon look like a giant sculpture that keeps changing shape with the light. That violent shape was formed by more than 100 million years of snowmelt and rain slowly carving deeper and deeper into the land. The canyon drops about 660 to 920 feet deep, with a floor about 330 to 1,300 feet wide and an upper rim about 2,600 to 3,300 feet wide. On the near vertical walls, there is almost no plant life, and the tight erosion lines look like a forest of giant stone swords driven into the earth. That harsh, ruined, and almost unreal beauty is what has made this place one of the standout photo spots for people chasing surreal landscapes. Chandao Lake, China, emerging as a mystical green labyrinth. This man-made wonder is a testament to humanity's extraordinary power to reshape nature. This magnificence was built upon the sacrifice of nearly 300,000 residents who left their homes and fields submerged deep under the cold water. At a depth of 131 feet, two ancient cities, 18 centuries old, still retain their intricate carvings, defying the destruction of time. Spreading across 221 square miles with over 1,000 islands, each flooded peak has now become a lush green oasis floating in the heart of the lake. Curiously, the crystal clear water allows light to penetrate up to 39 feet deep, enabling travellers to clearly see life and limestone reefs lurking at the bottom. It is the stable temperature between 50 and 68 degrees Fahrenheit that acts as a natural archive, perfectly protecting the ancient wooden heritage from rot. Mardi Temple Grottos, China. Shattering all construction limits, this spiritual complex is a giant honeycomb carved directly into a vertical red sandstone cliff. Exploration journey forces travelers to crawl on all fours, desperately clinging to sweat-soaked, near-vertical stairs hidden within the dark stone core. The precarious feeling reaches its peak when you are perched at an altitude of 8,200 to 9,186 feet, adjacent to eternal snow white peaks. Instead of building up into the sky, the ancients created a bizarre masterpiece by hollowing out the mountain's belly into a giant 7-story pagoda completely hidden inside. Just outside the cliff are heart stopping wooden balconies mortised straight into the boulder, hanging in midair without any supporting pillars from below. Despite its extraordinary architecture, the crumbly stone and continuously erosive winds are turning this suspended masterpiece into an extremely fierce conservation challenge every day. Mogao Caves, China. Hidden amidst the deadly sea of sand, the Mogao Caves are a great spiritual heritage patiently carved and painted by humanity for 1,000 continuous years. To create these immortal masterpieces, the ancients crushed countless precious stones, more expensive than solid gold like lapis lazuli and cinnabar, to use as painting materials. The cruelty of time has oxidized the lead powder makeup, turning the fair faces of brilliant flying deities into a mysterious solid black. This land once shocked the world by accidentally revealing a sealed room containing 50,000 ancient manuscripts and texts sleeping peacefully for 9 centuries. If you put the entire system of murals and clay statues here together, you would have to walk through a giant art gallery stretching nearly 30 miles. Standing in a cramped space to look up at the 114-foot giant Buddha statue, anyone will feel incredibly small before the majestic power of faith. Wulong Castle, famous as a giant open-air museum of stone. This place overwhelms people with huge natural rock bridges and sinkholes dropping more than 1,600 feet. But today, instead of struggling down a dangerous path, visitors can take a giant glass elevator that drops hundreds of feet in about 1 minute. That strange beauty, almost like another planet, was powerful enough for Hollywood to use it in giant robot battle scenes. The lower you go, the stronger the contrast becomes, with cold grey cliffs above and dark green forests with cool damp air below. What makes it even more special is that these bridges were not built by people, but are the remaining stone roofs of ancient caves that partly collapsed over a very long time. And if that still is not enough, you can step onto a glass platform hanging nearly 1,000 feet above the valley floor and feel as if your feet are standing in open air. Dagu Glacier at 16,000 feet. This glacier looks like a frozen planet cut off from the living world below. Just under the cloud layer, there are still forests, lakes, and green colour, but higher up, everything suddenly disappears, and only snow, rock, and cold wind remain. Across that surface, sharp ice ridges and deep cracks spread in every direction, and bad weather can wipe out your view in a very short time. To reach that world, the cable car carries visitors up about 4,000 feet in only 15 minutes, creating a sudden and overwhelming change of scene. What makes it even stranger is that some of the ice is not dull white, but shines blue like a gemstone because it has been pressed dense over a very long time. Time? Because the air is so thin, even the modern coffee shop near the highest viewing area needs a constant oxygen supply, so visitors can safely stay and take in the harsh beauty around them. Ergen wetland. In the middle of the dry grassland, this wetland appears like a vast, untouched green sea lying on land. Autumn here is breathtaking but very short, because in less than 3 weeks, the whole wide land can burst into bright gold and deep red. Across the still water, countless shrub clusters rise like small floating islands, making the line between land and water almost disappear. Spreading across more than 4,800 square miles, it is often praised as the #1 wetland in Asia and also serves as an important stop for many migratory birds. From above, the winding waterways shine under the sun like countless silver ribbons woven across the earth. In flood season, the wetland reflects the sky so clearly that it can feel as if you were standing on the border between the ground and the clouds. Bezekliki, Thousand Buddha Caves, clinging to bright red cliffs. These 77 caves hang above the dry land like a line of temples caught in the sky. But the site also carries very clear wounds, because in the early 20th century, many murals were cut from the walls and taken abroad, leaving rough, empty scars behind. What feels strangest is that below those burning dry cliffs, there are still trees and a small stream, so the caves seem to stand right between life and death. In many of the paintings that remain, you can still see faces and clothing from faraway lands, showing that this was once a major meeting place on the Silk Road. That is why, even in its damaged state, the whole place still feels like a giant vault of memory left behind by the ancient Silk Road. Kalajun grassland, China, renowned as the most beautiful three-dimensional grassland on the planet. This wonder resembles a giant velvet carpet suspended on the mountains at an altitude of 6,500 to 11,800 feet. Standing out against that lush green background are the white tents of nomads, a type of mobile architecture easily disassembled for seasonal migration. When the sunset slants down, shadows from the rolling hills transform the ground into graceful curves, exactly like a masterpiece sculpture of the human body. Nah. Spreading over 1,100 square miles, this bizarre wavy surface is actually the trace left by fierce tectonic crust faults from ancient times. The space is artistically divided as dark snow pines grow only on the shaded slopes, drawing a sharp, jagged line on the grass. This majestic grassland was also the historical cradle of the legendary heavenly horses, a treasure that made ancient emperors willing to trade with wars. Tarim Desert Highway in a desert often described as a place where you can enter but may not return. This road appears like a black asphalt line stretching 324 miles across a sea of moving samudra. It is not only the longest desert highway in the world, but also a symbol of how humans tried to open a lifeline through brutal nature. Along the road, about 108 pumping stations help draw salty underground water, and many use solar power to keep trees alive in heat above 122 degrees Fahrenheit. Completed in 1995 to move people and equipment deep into the desert, this road once became the key to reaching oil resources buried under the sand. On both sides of the highway, a sand blocking forest belt more than 248 miles long forms a rare green corridor trying to stop the golden sea of sand from swallowing the road. The stone sea of Xingwen, instead of water, this place looks like an ocean turned to stone, with tens of thousands of grey white rock spikes rising like wild waves frozen in the middle of a storm. This was also the last home of the Bo people, a mysterious warrior tribe that disappeared from history in the 16th century, making the already harsh landscape feel even more haunting. Beneath that stone sea lies a network of more than 200 huge caves, so wide and dark that sound seems to vanish the moment it appears. The sinkhole here is more than 750 feet deep and nearly 2,150 feet long, so massive that it feels able to swallow several giant stadiums. In truth, this whole land is the remains of ancient coral reefs from about 500 million years ago. So standing here feels like looking at the last body of a dead ocean. Namtso Lake, Tibet, China. Namtso is an ocean floating on the roof of the world where the sky descends so low that white clouds seem within arm's reach. For 5 months of winter, the lake's surface freezes into a crystal block 7 feet thick, strong enough to carry vehicles traveling across the water. When spring arrives, the silence is broken by the powerful sound of cracking ice like rolling thunder, signaling a strong resurgence of life. Altitude of 15,479 feet, this salt lake is a spiritual center where believers come to cleanse their karma through arduous walking circuits. Spreading over 741 square miles, this place resembles a giant magic mirror, perfectly reflecting the towering snow peaks around it. However, this paradise is full of challenges as oxygen levels are halved and ultraviolet rays can cause severe skin burns in just 30 minutes. Chuandixia village. Clinging to the mountainside like a fortress, this village still keeps much of the old look it had centuries ago. Each house is protected by stone walls more than 2 feet thick, and the tiny high windows were once used to shoot arrows at mountain bandits. Narrow uphill lanes paved with rough stone connect the homes, and the deeper you walk, the more the whole place feels like a closed maze. Instead of standing on flat ground, hundreds of houses are stacked step by step along the slope, so the roof of one home can even become the yard of the house above it. The whole village was also arranged like an open fan or a golden toad, so it could catch sunlight and reduce the force of harsh mountain winds. Winds, because it was built on solid bedrock. Digging wells was almost impossible, so for generations, people had to carry water by hand up the slippery stone steps. The mushroom villages of Honghe. Halfway up the mountain, these homes look like giant mushrooms floating in a sea of cloud. In the flooding season, the many rice terraces below turn into countless bright mirrors, making the whole village seem to drift on a shining galaxy. Each house usually has 3 levels, with animals on the ground floor so their body heat can rise and warm the people living above. The village sits at the waist of the mountain below the water-holding forest and above the terraces, so water can flow down naturally to feed the fields. To fight the cold, people build earthen walls about 2 feet thick and use large straw roofs, which keep the homes warm and help them blend into the mountain colours. About every 10 years, the villagers work together to replace tens of thousands of pounds of fresh straw, and that is how this special survival design has lasted for more than 13 centuries. Bayambla grassland. Hidden among snowy mountain ranges, this grassland rises more than 8,200 feet above sea level and opens like a giant green velvet carpet locked inside a high basin. Even though winter could cut this place off for months, ancient nomadic tribes still drove their animals across snowy mountains to live in this harsh land. Even stranger, the grassland has almost no tall trees, only grass, water, and marsh, so anyone standing there feels completely exposed to mountain winds sweeping for hundreds of miles. Across that wide, flat ground, the river does not move in a straight line, but twists again and again through the plain, turning into a famous maze of water. Its most magical moment comes at sunset. When light strikes, the river bends and creates the illusion of 9 suns lying one after another on the grassland. Surrounded by snowy mountain walls, the whole basin feels like a giant machine for gathering clouds, and in the end it paints an almost unreal picture of green grass, white snow, and open sky. The ancient city of Jiaohe. In a sun-scorched valley, a giant mass of earth rises like an ancient ship, stranded on land and slowly melting under the light. For more than 2,300 years, it served as the capital of an ancient kingdom and as an important control point on the Silk Road, guiding the movement of people and trade across the desert. Its strangest feature is that ancient people did not build the city upward, but cut directly into a huge block of earth to shape homes, temples, and streets as if carving a whole city from one body of soil. The entire city stands on a raised strip of land about 1 mile long, more than 980 feet wide, and ringed by cliffs rising over 100 feet. Those two rivers and steep rock edges turned it into a massive military fortress without the need for any city walls. Inside, some roads were cut as deep as 20 feet, helping people escape the brutal heat while making the whole place feel like a maze sunk into the earth. Duan underground dwellings. Feels like an invisible world where daily life sinks quietly into the earth instead of rising into the open sky. Because these homes are built deep inside one continuous mass of ground, they can resist earthquakes better than many ordinary surface houses. Each courtyard is dug about 23 feet deep, with rooms carved horizontally into the surrounding walls to create strength, silence, and shelter. At the centre of the yard is a smart drainage well that quickly removes rainwater, helping the underground space stay dry even during storms. With a history reaching back more than 4,000 years, this is a living fossil of home design and a striking example of human survival wisdom on the lowest plateau. Its unusual beauty carries a deeper message of humility, showing how people chose to live within the earth and let nature protect them instead of trying to dominate it. Ninggu Ice Cave, China. China appears as an eternal crystal kingdom where time seems frozen for over 3 million years, even while the outside world endures intense summer heat. Perched at about 7,500 feet above sea level, it stands as one of the largest and most impressive ice cave systems ever discovered. Its unique structure works like a natural thermos, trapping cold air inside while blocking warmer air from entering, which allows the ice to survive year-round. Extending more than 328 feet deep across 5 levels, the cave reveals massive frozen waterfalls and towering ice columns linking floor and ceiling. Every surface is covered in thick, clear ice, forming a glowing maze that feels like walking through glass deep beneath the earth. The contrast between this frozen world and the nearby underground coalfires creates a rare and powerful geological paradox found in very few places on Earth. Yuanyang rice terraces appear like giant fingerprints pressed into the mountain slopes, where human hands and nature have shaped the land together for more than 13 centuries. Through the mist, the Hani houses with mushroom-shaped roofs emerge quietly, showing a way of life that has remained closely tied to forest and mountain for generations. For more than 180 days each year, the area is often wrapped in white cloud, making the flooded terraces look like islands floating in the sky. Built entirely by hand, this immense system climbs from the valley floor to more than 6,500 feet, creating endless steps between earth and heaven. Beneath the shining water, rice, fish, and ducks support one another in a natural cycle that works without chemical fertilizer. It stands as powerful proof that human patience can transform steep mountains into a living heritage of beauty, survival, and harmony. Shangjiadangxia, Ibom feels like a colourful dream where nature wove ribbons of stone into a brilliant wonder in the heart of a dry and barren land. From afar, the rolling mountains look like waves of soft silk, yet they are actually hard sandstone layers built up over tens of millions of years. Their red, yellow, and green tones were shaped by iron oxidation and different minerals under long periods of heat, pressure, and geological change. The whole landscape was later pushed upward and folded by tectonic forces, helping turn ancient sediments into one of the most striking mountain scenes in China. In this region, the highest peaks rise above 6,000 feet and overlook about 19 square miles of coloured ridges and valleys. Its beauty becomes strongest after rain, when moisture deepens the colours and makes the mountains glow like a fresh oil painting under the light. Tiger Leaping Gorge. This brutal tear in Earth's crust drops into an abyss 12,795 feet deep, creating a suffocating space deep enough to bury four of the world's tallest buildings. Even before seeing the current, the violent sound wave rising from the bottom can pound the ears and shake the chest of anyone standing nearby. That fury is born when the river drops 656 feet through the gorge and is brutally squeezed into a narrow crevice only 66 to 98 feet wide, creating a deadly hydraulic press. Exposed in the middle of the bottleneck, a giant stone stubbornly stands against the mass of water, crashing straight into it every second. Survival would be almost impossible because the violent undercurrent could instantly drag down and crush anything caught inside. Heavenly Capital Peak. Rejecting all peaceful celestial beauty, this massive monolithic granite block pierces straight into the sky like a barren pillar at an altitude of 5,938 feet. Feet, with slopes reaching up to 85 degrees, the mountain strips away the proud, upright posture of humans, forcing visitors to crawl on stairs carved by chisels and dynamite. Without vegetation for protection, violent updrafts reaching 75 miles per hour constantly strike the cliffs, strong enough to smash drones and blow away anyone not gripping the chains tightly. The most terrifying nightmare lies on the stone blade, only 3 feet wide and 33 feet long, where bottomless abysses on both sides stretch the human nervous system to its breaking point. Constantly looking up at the overhanging cliffs and then suddenly down toward the abyss can break the brain's sense of balance, creating extreme dizziness as if gravity itself is dragging the body downward. New Bishan. Honoured as the most spectacular infinity observation deck in Sichuan, New Beishan reigns at an altitude of 12,008 feet, with a natural terrace of 32,292 square feet, completely free of blind spots. The visual feast here reaches its peak during a 15-minute sunrise when sunlight directly strikes the snow-capped mountain ranges and turns them into blindingly bright blocks of solid gold. That brilliant scenery often blends with a dense cloud layer born from a temperature inversion constantly churning and crashing down into the valley to form a violent cloud waterfall at 25 miles per hour. When reflecting upon this very ocean of fog, the light also creates the surreal Buddha's light illusion, superimposing the observer's giant shadow into a hovering halo of 7 colours. However, to capture those masterpieces of a lifetime, tourists are forced to embark on a life or death journey hanging on the edge of a deep abyss with over 60 life-threatening hairpin turns. Jade Dragon Snow Mountain. Known as a Great Climate Paradox, Jade Dragon Snow Mountain is the perpetual glacier located closest to the equator in the entire Northern Hemisphere. At an altitude of 14,764 feet, oxygen drops by 40%, turning every breath into painful torture and forcing the heart rate to race even when an explorer stands completely still. Still, that harshness, combined with fragile limestone in the cliffs, has protected the glory of the 18,360-foot peak, turning it into an undefeated fortress without a single human footprint. The entire mountain range winds for 22 miles like a jade dragon embracing thousand-year-old ice layers compressed so tightly that they only radiate a magical sapphire light. The most spectacular scene bursts open during 10 minutes of sunrise when sunlight directly strikes the snow peaks and lights up the entire fierce dragon into a blazing block of solid gold. Panlong Ancient Road, dubbed the fingerprint of God, the Panlong Ancient Road challenges death at an altitude of 14,006 feet, where a 40% drop in oxygen can easily overwhelm the nervous system of even the bravest drivers. Under the glaring sun, the metal guardrails running along the cliff edge shine brilliantly, sketching the shape of a giant black dragon slithering up the rock face. The madness of this construction lies in cramming over 600 continuous hairpin turns into a steep stretch measuring only 19 miles. Despite such harshness, this place becomes a healing sanctuary thanks to a signpost carrying the message that the driver has overcome all the twists of life to move toward peace. However, that enlightened journey demands intense concentration because the continuous steepness can boil the brake fluid and turn the car into a coffin, plunging into the abyss after just 15 minutes of descending. Jammen Pass, renowned for its extreme danger, the Ape Road precariously hangs on a massive, primitive, conglomerate rock, forming a ruthless sheer grey wall that vertically splits the space. This route acts as a death machine, constantly enduring the wind tunnel effect, blasting violent updrafts up to 45 miles per hour, waiting to sweep everything away. The peril multiplies as explorers are suspended at an altitude of 3,281 feet, face to face with a gaping abyss 1,640 feet deep without any protective barriers. To survive on this slippery cliff, humans are stripped of their proud, upright posture and forced to crawl on all fours, pressing their chest tightly against the mountain, exactly like primitive primates. Once the safety hook is fastened to the cable in that cramped space, the option to turn back is completely rejected, forcing even the most panicked individuals to grit their teeth and drag themselves to the very end. G305 U-shaped road. Famous across social media for looking like a road shooting into the sky, this route appears in the desert like a cold black cut across dead dry land. More than an important traffic route, it also sits on a road system over 1,864 miles long. like a lonely vein carrying goods and supplies through harsh land. The most dangerous part is the deep U-shaped basin, where a 66-foot truck can disappear for a few seconds before suddenly rushing into view. The famous slope here is actually only about 9%, but from far away, the drop and sudden rise make it look like a wall of nearly 90 degrees cutting into the sky. Under summer heat that can push the asphalt to 158 degrees Fahrenheit, the contrast between smooth black road and barren earth walls turns G315 into a scene that feels both unreal and risky. Goy Dilling. From above, this place looks like the glowing red back of a giant dragon, twisting between cold green pools and making the scene feel both beautiful and frightening. Because this beauty stays so close to danger, thousands of steel pins have been drilled into the rock to protect people walking along the bare ridges. Deep in the valleys, emerald water lies still between fire-red cliffs, creating a strange colour contrast like the landscape of another planet. On windless days, the water becomes smooth like a mercury mirror, reflecting the ridges into the abyss and making it hard to tell what is real rock and what is only a reflection. On the blade-like ridges, some parts are only wide enough for one person to pass, so every step on the smooth round sandstone becomes a test of the mind. Tengchong Volcanic Pocket. This place feels like a giant volcano museum, with nearly 100 volcanoes standing close together and many craters still deep and round like huge bowls. After eruptions long ago, the hot lava cooled and left behind rock walls made of straight, even columns that almost look built by human hands. Because so much heat still stays under the ground, the whole area is wrapped in soft steam for much of the year, making the land look as if it is quietly smoking. What makes the view even stranger is that many old craters are now covered by thick green forests, so the marks of fire stand right beside strong living colour. Under that rich soil, underground water is still heated from below and rises into pools and springs that keep boiling and bubbling. In some places, the water climbs above 200 degrees Fahrenheit, so beneath all that green beauty, the ground still hides heat powerful enough to frighten anyone. Kangalong Ridge. From far away, this ridge looks like the cold grey spine of a giant dragon moving through the clouds, making the whole path feel majestic but full of pressure. When clouds cover the ridge and some sections rise steeper than 45 degrees, many people dare not walk upright and must crawl with both hands and feet to keep balance. Its danger once terrified a great rider from the Tang dynasty so much that he wrote a final letter and threw it into the abyss, believing he could not survive the way down. Along this route, the dark grey rock mixes with moss and mist, making the mountain ridge look like the scales of a dragon twisting in the sky. At that frightening height, the clearest sounds are only the wind screaming through rock cracks and the iron chain hitting each other, turning every step into a mental test. Hailuogu, below the highest mountain in Sichuan, this place appears like an icy monster sliding down through forested mountains, letting people touch the ice age at only about 9,350 feet high. Unlike the usual silent image of ice, this glacier is still slowly moving, leaving cracking sounds and small ice falls like warnings from nature. Its surface is not smooth, but torn open by thousands of deep cracks and sharp ice points, looking like a white field of knives pointing toward the sky. The most overwhelming wonder is the largest icefall in Asia, more than 3,281 feet high and more than 3,609 feet wide, like a blue-silver tsunami frozen in mid-air. The name Hailuogu is also tied to a legend about a conch shell horn, as if people once needed a sacred sound to calm the spirit of the mountain. Wugong Mountain. Without vertical cliffs, this mountain still stays in climbers' memory with endless green ridges that look dreamlike but quietly drain their strength. When clouds rise from the valleys and wrap around the hills, this place becomes more than a trekking route, turning into a test of will between gentle beauty and desperate exhaustion. The trail runs along a narrow ridge, with grassy slopes falling on both sides, making each step feel soft like moving over waves of grass, but unstable like walking on a blade. From an old goat herder's path, Knife Edge Ridge has become a trekking symbol, where endless slopes force climbers to face their own limits. At nearly 6,293 feet high, alpine grasslands of more than 100,000 acres spread out like a giant green sea, creating a rare landscape high in the mountains. Kuka Grand Canyon. Like a red flame locked inside the mountain, this canyon was formed from 100 million year old sandstone, making the whole place glow under the sun as if it is burning. When you step inside, the heat outside suddenly turns into cool air, and the deep silence makes this place feel like a world separated from time. Once located on an ancient trade route, the canyon still carries the mystery of old camel caravans and Buddhist art traces hidden inside the rock. On both sides of the path, the cliffs stand almost vertical, rising up to 656 feet, forcing people through a natural tunnel more than 3 miles long inside a sea of red stone. In sections less than 3 feet wide, the sky becomes only a thin line of light, while the rock shadows change with the sun and make the canyon feel even more mysterious. Hongyagu Glass Bridge. Hanging between two red cliffs in Hebei province, this glass bridge looks like a transparent path floating in the air, making people feel as if they are standing on empty space. Between the clear glass floor, the wind screaming through the bridge gaps and the steel cables shaking softly create a tense atmosphere, making the fear underfoot feel even stronger. The most frightening part is that the bridge does not stay completely still, but can shake slightly when wind blows or when many people walk across it to release pressure. Feet. Because of this, Hongyagu Glass Bridge is not only a famous glass bridge, but also a mental challenge, where sound, shaking, and the deep empty space force people to face their fear of heights. Shailin Xia Glass Platform. Located in Pinggu District, Beijing, this glass platform looks like a glass flying saucer landing on a mountaintop, making people feel as if they are leaving the ground. Between the wind hitting the titanium frame and the ancient stone landscape below, this place is not only for viewing scenery, but also for testing the fear of heights. Looking through the almost transparent glass, thousands of sharp stone pillars appear like a giant stone maze that cannot be fully seen from the ground. The glass is up to 99% transparent, so when people stand at the outer edge, many feel as if nothing is supporting their feet except empty air. The glass floor reaches about 108 feet out from the cliff, and together with the thin titanium structure, it creates the illusion that the whole platform is floating above a valley more than 1,312 feet deep. Ligu Glacier. Unlike the familiar white color of snow, this glacier feels haunting with deep blue ice like gemstones, formed when ice has been compressed for centuries and reflects only blue light. In cold that can fall below -4 degrees Fahrenheit, the sapphire blue ice, white snow, and grey rocky mountains create a world that is beautiful but extremely harsh. Inside the ice, there are clear blue caves where light passes through the frozen walls, making the space feel like a crystal palace trapped in winter. In Tibetan, the name Laigu suggests a hidden valley where people and ancient ice have lived beside each other for centuries at more than 13,123 feet high. In winter, from January to March, the frozen lake allows people to walk close to the glacier while the sound of cracking ice feels like an ancient voice of the earth. Ghost city of Karamata. Not made by humans, this ruined stone city was carved by wind, sand, and time into fossil like castles across dry land. Land, entering the place known as the Ghost City, people can easily feel how small they are before the quiet but lasting power of nature over millions of years. Under the sunset, sandstone rocks shaped like fortresses, sphinxes, and ancient warriors suddenly glow red, making the whole land look like a burning maze of illusions. Few people would guess that this land of nearly 4 square miles was once a huge freshwater lake about 100 million years ago before it dried into a stone desert. When strong wind rushes through narrow cracks, the air is squeezed and creates strange howling sounds, sometimes like a beast roaring, and sometimes like crying echoing through dead silence. Shozai Tiankeng. In sharp contrast to its name, which means small village, this is the deepest natural sinkhole on Earth, dropping more than 2,100 feet and opening like a giant tear in the mountains. Its most frightening feature is the near vertical rock wall, which makes the whole abyss look like a huge shaft cut straight down into the earth. But the bottom is not dead stone, because inside a space of more than 4 billion cubic feet, there is still a dark, wet, ancient forest that feels almost cut off from the world above. This vast pit was formed when an underground river hollowed out the rock for about 128,000 years. Then the cave roof collapsed into two huge, nested bowls like a stone hourglass. Because the temperature changes so strongly between the rim and the bottom, water vapor often gathers into hanging clouds of mist halfway down the pit. Researchers have also recorded 1,285 plant species and many rare animals inside, making this place feel not only terrifying but also like a hidden world sealed away for ages.